Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company. Dear listeners, welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast series. And we have Matt as a guest today. Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So welcome to the podcast. And I'm going to give Matt a couple the word, and he's going to introduce himself, what he's doing, tell about his company, and also where he's based. Here you go.
Welcome, listeners. Hello, everybody. My name's Matt. I'm the director at the Institute for Teaching. We're a UK-based specialist graduate school for teachers. That means that we spend our time and energy and effort thinking about how to better teach and develop teachers. We have a single purpose, I suppose, and that's to help teachers to keep getting better.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. So can you tell me then about your ideas in terms of using technology in general for education? Are you positive, negative about that? And why?
So, yeah, a really good and interesting topic and question. And I suppose I'd start by saying that overall, I'm optimistic about the role that technology can play in both teaching and teacher education, which is the area that obviously we're particularly interested in. But it's worth saying that I start off somewhat skeptical about this particular area after we've had a couple of false starts, I suppose, in the English education system in particular. Most notably, interactive whiteboards and iPads in classrooms. Whilst, as I said at the start, I'm optimistic and I think there are lots of benefits, I think I'm right in saying that lots of teachers, teacher educators and school leaders haven't always seen the benefits of technology, or at least seen the benefits that were originally promised. And we found ourselves in a situation where these false starts have made big parts of the sector quite skeptical. Both interactive whiteboards and iPads are expensive, and as far as I'm aware, haven't demonstrated that much in the way of impact, or certainly not the level of impact that was promised. And so we've got a bit of an uphill struggle, I think, to convince teachers, school leaders, teacher educators that the benefits of technology can be borne out.
That's an interesting point about the expenses and all that. We have done the research last year among educators around the world. Also, there were a couple from UK. And that's one of the major points that was mentioned by educators, the expenses and the internet connection, and also their kind of going outside the comfort zone in order to use the technology in the classroom. So you are touching one of the points that came up with the research, the expenses, and if they are covered by school, by teachers, by educators themselves, and who is responsible for that. So as far as I understand, like based on your professional background, you're dealing a lot with the educators, and how do you in your personal point of view, how do you understand if it is really they are keen on using technology in general, regardless the fact of expenses and so on, or they're very cautious about that?
So I think that teachers are savvy and thoughtful individuals who think really hard about the opportunity cost of taking on new initiatives, doing things differently. And this is sometimes viewed as a kind of particularly in the technology space, as a kind of form of conservatism, like a reluctance to try new things. And that, I think, it is partly right in some cases, but it is also the result of teachers taking a look at the technology available to them, taking a look at the evidence of that technology improving either the knowledge or skill of the young people for whom they're responsible, and not necessarily always seeing the benefits, not seeing the rationale for changing what it is that they're doing, and taking a risk on trying something new. And I think there are two reasons why that skepticism exists, or two theories, hypotheses that I have. The first is that often in the technology space, and I use the word often really deliberately, this is not always the case, and I'd like to talk about some examples a little bit later on, but often technology is education technology is a solution in search of a problem. We are, as teachers and teacher educators, presented with lots of great innovations in the technology space that haven't been thought of and designed to solve a particular educational problem. One of my colleagues describes it a little bit like the band Goldie Looking Chain described it, which is that, these things are tools, and tools without a smart user are a bit of a waste of time. And Goldie Looking Chain described this as guns don't kill people, rappers do, which is a kind of helpful way of thinking about anything that might be introduced into a classroom: an iPad, a interactive whiteboard screen, a app, a text message, anything else you might care to think of. They're just tools, and if they're not in the hands of the right people, they're unlikely to show much of a benefit. I often hear about technology being able to help make things fun, or give people choice, or make learning relevant, none of which I see as the major problems in our education system. I think teachers spend most of their time thinking about how can this technology help improve the knowledge of the skills of the pupils that I'm responsible for. And unless it does that really effectively, they're unlikely to spend a huge amount of time and energy. And we as teacher educators are unlikely to introduce large aspects into our curriculum because there are better, higher impact things that those teachers can be spending their time on. The second theory, the second problem, is that we need to see this space, or those working in the ed tech space need to see it as big ed, little tech, and not the other way around. The two are sort of related to each other. I often meet organizations want to talk to me about the great tech that they've got, but the expertise of the education person in the room isn't what it needs to be. And that means that these ventures often lack rigor in their underpinning theory of learning. Their technology advocates are often on the side of the futurists and the people who peddle neuromyths. The kids don't need to learn anything because of Google gang. And whilst that's not everybody, I think it is a decent chunk. And so their credibility holds them back, I suppose, is the important part of this. And so until they invest in that ed bit and make the ed more important than the tech, and until they're thinking clearly about the tech being a solution to a problem, not some great tech that might be interesting and feel exciting for a short period of time, that skepticism that I spoke of at the start, the skepticism that came about because of thousands of interactive whiteboards being installed in classrooms up and down the country, that barrier, that hill is going to be difficult to overcome.
I like your insightful points of view. And you are so right, because we're talking also a lot to different educators around the world and from secondary and primary schools. And what you just said is really reflecting the point. And as far as I know, your organization is delivering different educational programs for the teachers. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. So we spend, it starts to get a bit meta, but we spend our time thinking about how to teach teachers how to teach. And So when it comes to tech, often, as you said in the research, one of the challenges is that the teachers haven't been trained to use particular pieces of technology. And that's where, if the case was compelling enough, we might come in that those approaches might find their way integrated into our curriculum in some way, shape, or form. But the pressures on that curriculum are incredibly tight, as they are for all of the people who are responsible right from day one, training and developing teachers. The curriculum for your qualified teacher status in England, the qualification that you need to be able to teach, is packed full. And so if you want to add new things into that curriculum, you almost certainly have to take things out, which means that the case for adding something in has to be very, very good. And Ed's tech case in general often isn't as good as it probably needs to be to find its way into that curriculum.
That's one of the good points you just mentioned, because sometimes we also come across while researching the market, not all the brilliant edtech companies that are coming up with the solutions are actually relevant to the curriculum and relevant to the teachers to use in the classroom or recommend the kids to use outside the classroom. And it's quite difficult also to fit that all, because curriculums are different in all the parts of the world as well. I want to now ask you about your personal opinion in terms of using technology in the classroom, and which one you think among those that are like booming and emerging or already existing ones could be beneficial for the classroom. And what I mean here is, like, do you personally use, or do you think it's going to be beneficial to use something like e-libraries or different digital learning, so maybe 3D printing or robotics or something like AR, VR in the classroom, and why?
So I'm going to split this into two parts, and I'll talk first about some of the great organizations and innovations that I think are currently available in this space, and then I'll indulge in a bit of future gazing myself as to what I think some of the possibilities might be. I've got three examples, all of which don't fall into those two traps that I mentioned. So all three of these organizations or these innovations both solve a very real problem for teachers, school leaders, or teacher educators, and two, focus and double down on the education and pedagogy that sits behind the technology and not the other way around. So the first one is an organization called No More Marking. Now, the problem that No More Marking is trying to solve is that as humans, not as teachers or school leaders, but just as humans generally, our brains are pretty bad at making a judgment between any given thing and a set of criteria on which we're going to assess it. So take an essay for an English GCSE, and the way that we usually assess that essay is we have a list of criteria which denote what a good essay is, and a teacher tries to compare the essay to the list of criteria. Now, successive studies have shown us that humans are just not very good at doing that. However, what we are very good at is, or much better at least, is comparing two different things and deciding which of the two is better. So if I presented you with a mobile phone and a list of criteria about whether this mobile phone was any good and asked you to mark it, that would be a less accurate endeavor than giving you two mobile phones and telling you which one is better. Now, the people behind No More Marking are experts in this particular area of assessment. They understand it very well, and they're trying to help reduce teacher workload and improve marking accuracy in classrooms, improve the reliability of those assessments, by helping teachers to compare things with each other and then sort those compared things into a rank order. Now, they're a tech company in some respects because they use the technology to allow that sorting process to be very quick and very efficient. You look on the screen, you see two pieces of work, you judge which one's better, and you do that over and over and over again. And the technology sorts then your marking into a rank order. Big Ed first, understanding the principles of assessment, understanding that teachers have a particular challenge around marking and workload, and they have a particular challenge around making their assessments reliable. And the tech is a way, a method, a tool that allows them to do that very effectively. As teacher educators, we're using a similar technique and tool to help judge the quality of applications to our programs. Again, we're not very good at looking at some criteria and judging whether a particular application to our program is any good or not. We are much better at comparing applications and sorting them into a rank order. And so we're using that same technology to solve a problem that we have. So that's the first example. The second example is an organization called Assembly. Now, the problem that they're trying to solve is that schools collect lots and lots and lots of data, and it's often locked away in systems that aren't very good at sharing it and aren't very good at helping school leaders make sense of it. What Assembly does is it uses its technology to extract that data and present it in a way that helps school leaders make better quality decisions about the things that they need to do in their school, their curriculum, their methods of instruction, their assessment, their behavior policies. The list goes on. Again, at the heart of that organization are smart education people who also draw on technology expertise to make their product really, really good. And the third and final one is an organization called Times Tables Rockstars. So we also know that learning your times tables when you're at primary school is critical to progressing a good pace through mathematics curriculum. If you've got your times tables at your fingertips, that is a great advantage to you, and it's something that is really important for all pupils, regardless of their background, to master. Now, the best approach to doing that involves a carefully sequenced curriculum and really determined and enthusiastic pupils. And what the technology allows is for the sequence to be carefully designed centrally by a group of experts, and then quickly scaled up using the Times Tables Rockstars platform. The skin then also allows 10-year-olds to work becoming a rock god in their times tables. It's engaging, it's interesting, it's fun, and kids love getting involved with it and using that technology. And three examples, one of which is for teacher workload and for teachers, one of which is for schools and for school leaders, one of which is for pupils themselves, where the education is at the heart of what they're doing, and technology is an enabling tool to help them do a really good job of that work. They solve problems, and they're rigorous and well thought through. Organizations focus their energy and efforts on the problem and not the tech. So they're my three examples of where it's going really well. If I'm I suppose future gazing, as a teacher educator, one of the problems that we face is that schools are geographically spread out. I mean, in the UK, that's a problem. When you start to look at other places around the world, the US or India or China, getting teachers from one school into another school to see some teaching by a particular teacher, to be able to watch and observe lessons and learn from those lessons is really tricky. If I want to gather a group of teachers in London to go and see a teacher in a particular school, it's reasonably straightforward. But if I want to add in some teachers from the west coast of Cumbria, it becomes virtually impossible. Now, the development and the relatively low cost now of camera technology, the promise of virtual reality, and the lowering costs of that, I think gives us as teacher educators a really exciting opportunity to help more teachers look into the classrooms of their colleagues and learn from them without the need to travel large distances or locate yourself close to each other so that you can work with each other. Any teacher from anywhere would be able to watch a classroom and a lesson and discuss that with other colleagues who are watching and listening without disturbing the class, without needing to travel very far, without having 20 people stood at the back And I think the more we can get teachers looking into the classrooms of their colleagues and using that as an opportunity to learn from each other, the better off we'll be. And I can see technology being a really powerful way of enabling that to happen.
I love the examples totally, and I would like to agree that it is indeed the fact that technology is an enabler, and it's in the hands of every person who is using this technology, regardless if it is an education sector or it is a private life or it's the business. It is in the hands of the person to choose the way to use it and how to make the workflow efficient or the private life efficient, and so on. Thank you so much for those great examples. And one more question I have to you. So if we are like me and you, we're the people who are totally for using technology in education at the proper level and choosing the way that the life of the kids at school efficient or our life or business efficient. However, sometimes we meet people who say that I'm the educator and I used to teach this way for the last years, and I think that technology is not necessary to use at school. What do you normally say to these people to encourage them using the technology?
The burden here lies on the organizations to essentially win the argument. If what it is that they have genuinely solves a problem that a teacher or a school leader or a teacher educator has, and that is ultimately going to lead to more children knowing more, loving school more, being happier, being healthier, I think they will find themselves, in the most part, pushing at an open door. I know, no teacher who doesn't get out of bed in the morning with the best interests of their pupil at heart, and the skepticism should be seen through the lens of wanting to do the best for their pupils and not yet being convinced that platform A or B or application A or B is going to help with that. Back to my 2 points, when those teachers are convinced that the ed is big and the tech is small, and they can see that it solves a real problem that they have, and often it's simple to use. Remember, as a profession, and there are about 450,000 teachers in England alone, we're busy and don't have time to get our heads around complex technology. But if it's simple, if it helps pupils and it solves a real problem, I think you'll find that the sector is pushing at an open door. It certainly would be with me and with my organisation. And I think that's where the burden lies. I wouldn't advocate for I suppose I'm with the teachers, right? Like, you've got to show me that this works, and if you don't show me that this works, then I'm unlikely to make big, very important decisions about changing what it is that I do to integrate it into my day-to-day routine.
Okay, got you. That's brilliant. Maybe one more question, if you let me. Is there any specific resources that you personally follow in order to keep on track the use in the ed tech?
So I get a big part of my education news. I get a big part of the people that challenge me on the way that I think about things from Twitter, which is another great example of technology solving a problem in a simple and clear way. That is, before Twitter, there wasn't really a way of large numbers of teachers discussing what it is that they do in their classrooms day to day. What we've seen from Twitter is other organizations like TeacherTapp, which is a rapid teacher surveying tool, worth having a look on the App Store and giving that a download, asks you 3 quick questions a day, and is helping the wider sector better understand the teaching profession and what it does day to day, what it thinks about, how many classrooms it teaches in. The list goes on and on. But that platform is where I think lots of teachers are going for thinking and ideas, and is the forum in which this argument, if it is to be won, is going to be won. There are lots of examples of technology being adopted pretty rapidly by schools. Think about schools that send out text messages to parents. Most schools now have a system in place that sends a text message home if a child's absent, or sends a text message home if a kid needs picking up because they're poorly on a given day. I think that is the forum where these simple and effective ideas can be shared, and where the argument can be won if the case is well presented and well thought through.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this. And I think that this podcast had great insights and interesting information on how it's all right now representing the scope of understanding why teachers do not use technology and what are the challenges. I really appreciate your time, Matt, and I really appreciate your thoughts. So thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Everything changes.